The forest was still when the scream cut through it. A sharp human sound swallowed by the wind. Eli Grant froze mid-step, his breath forming clouds in the dawn chill. Cole Rivers, camera raised, whispered, "That wasn't a bear." The words hung heavy in the pine-scented air. They'd come for footage. Just another hunt for clicks. But something about this silence was wrong. The tracks weren't right. Each paw print looked too precise, too human. "What would you do?" Eli muttered, voice shaking, "if the thing you were hunting started following you?" Behind them, Nina Hall's camera light flickered. She swore she saw movement. A shadow too tall, too deliberate, watching them from the ridge. And when the creature turned, for a heartbeat, its eyes caught the light and reflected understanding. By midday, the cold had teeth. The team set up camp near an old ranger post half buried in snow. Eli's hands shook as he unpacked his gear. The tracks they'd followed ended abruptly, as if whatever left them had taken flight. Cole, undeterred, set up his tripod, talking to his audience through chattering teeth. "We're deep in bear country," he said with a grin. But his eyes betrayed the tremor underneath. Nina found an old ranger badge half frozen in the ground. The name faded but familiar. E. Grant. She looked up at Eli, and for the first time saw something other than fear in his eyes. She saw recognition. Night fell fast. The fire crackled, spitting sparks into the dark. Eli stared into it, seeing faces in the flames. Cole edited footage on his laptop, headphones half off, muttering about the clicks they'd get. Nina journaled quietly, documenting the strange symmetry of the tracks. But when the wind shifted, they all heard it. A faint voice drifting between trees. "Hooray," drawn out like breath through broken glass. Cole laughed nervously. "Echoes!" But the fire dimmed. The generator stuttered, and from the black beyond their camp, something repeated the name. Same voice, same tone, perfect imitation. Sleep never came. The wind clawed at the tent walls. Sometime after midnight, Eli opened his eyes to a soft scrapping. Metal against fabric. He sat up, every breath loud in his ears. Through the thin canvas, a shadow loomed, tall, swaying, sniffing. Cole stirred beside him, whispering, "Bear?" Eli reached for his rifle, but froze when the shape spoke. "You left me here," it said, in Eli's own voice. At dawn, they found the tracks circling their tent. One continuous line. Perfectly spaced, perfectly human. Cole refused to believe it, muttering about echoes and tricks of light. Nina stayed silent, pale and trembling. Eli just stared into the tree line. "It knows my name," he whispered. Somewhere deeper in the woods, a growl rose, low, deliberate, almost a word. "Eli!" By afternoon, the forest had grown silent in a way that made the air feel thick. Snow muffled every step, and even the birds seemed to vanish. Eli led the way through a narrow path of pines, scanning for fresh signs. Cole's camera buzzed softly in his gloved hands. The screen flickered with static every few seconds. "Battery's fine," he muttered. "It's like something's jamming it." Nina walked behind, eyes fixed on the tree line, her breath shallow. "No animal can do that," she said. But as they rounded the bend, they saw it. A hulking black mass near an old ranger outpost. It stood wrong, its back too straight. Cole whispered, "Finally." Then the creature turned, and for the first time they realized it wasn't a bear. Cole whispered into his camera, narrating every move, his voice trembling under the guise of control. "We've spotted the target. It's bigger than any bear we've seen." Eli held up a hand, signaling silence. The creature shifted slightly, revealing long arms that brushed the snow. Nina whispered, "It's watching us." Her words barely left her lips before the things had turned, and for a breathless moment, they saw its eyes. Wide, human, intelligent. The air seemed to hum, a deep vibration in their bones. Cole took a step forward. "Don't," Eli hissed. But it was too late. The creature took one step closer, upright, balanced, deliberate. The creature bolted into the trees, its movement too smooth, too deliberate to be animal. Cole cursed and gave chase, camera bouncing. "Cole!" Nina shouted, her voice cracking. Eli ran after them, slipping on ice, the sound of branches snapping ahead. They followed until the trees broke into a clearing, where the snow was churned and red. Cole knelt, gasping, filming frantically. "It's blood," he whispered. But Nina's gaze was fixed on something else. Claw marks etched into the bark, perfectly straight, 5 lines down, 5 lines up, repeating like writing. They followed the blood trail back toward the outpost. The wooden structure leaned at an angle, half buried in frost, its windows fogged from the inside. "No one's lived here in decades," Eli murmured. But as they approached, the door creaked open. Inside, dust floated in golden shafts of dying light. Old Ranger uniforms hung on hooks, and on one, stitched into the chest, was a name patch that read, "E. Grant." Nina turned toward Eli slowly, her expression twisting between disbelief and fear.
"Eli," she whispered, "what is this place?"
Cole played back the drone footage that night. The grainy image showed the same clearing, the creature standing tall, its breath fogging the air. Then, frame by frame, it turned. The face was visible now. It wasn't a bear's, it was something close to a man's, with fur like a shroud and eyes too aware. Then, clear as day, it spoke. The voice was distorted but unmistakable. It said Eli's name, over and over, soft, deliberate, almost pleading. The screen flickered, and for a second, Eli's reflection merged with the creature's face, one staring back at the other. The cabin groaned through the night, wood stretching and sighing like something alive. Eli sat by the window, staring at the tree line, rifle resting on his knees. Snow fell soundlessly, burying the tracks they'd left behind. Cole slept uneasily beside his camera. Nina wrote furiously in her notebook, her hands trembling. "You're not sleeping," she said softly. Eli didn't respond. Outside, something moved. Not the wind, not an animal. A shape, tall and slow, weaving between trees. Then came the voice, deep, low, speaking through the cold. "Eli," it said, the same tone, the same breath. His own voice. Eli stepped outside before dawn, snow crunching beneath his boots. The air burned his lungs. He followed the faint echo of his name through the forest, each repetition fainter but clearer, leading him deeper. Cole's voice called after him, distant and small. But Eli couldn't stop. The voice ahead wasn't an imitation. It was pleading, broken. "Help me." He pushed through the trees and found a clearing with something impossible. A second rifle, half buried in the snow, identical to his. The initials carved into the stock were his own. Cole and Nina found him an hour later, kneeling in the snow, staring at the rifle like it was sacred. "Eli," Nina whispered. "What is that?" He didn't answer. Cole filmed from a distance, zooming in on Eli's face. His breath moved too slowly, his lips barely parting. Then, faintly, another voice whispered from behind him. A perfect mirror of his own, repeating his words an instant after he spoke them. "It's mine," he said. Then again, "It's mine." But the echo came from the trees. Back in the cabin, the air felt wrong. Too thick, too heavy. Cole replayed his footage in silence. On screen behind Eli, the figure's head twitched in mechanical movements. Nina covered her mouth, eyes glistening. "That's not lighting," she whispered. "Not sure you knew." It's copying him. The next clip showed the thing standing still as Eli turned away, and for half a second, its face came into focus, stretched, half-furred, half-human, with eyes that flickered between green and gold. "It's you," Cole whispered to Eli. "It's been watching you for years." That night, the storm broke. The wind howled so fiercely that the cabin seemed to groan in pain. Cole set up cameras at every window, his breath ragged, muttering about catching proof. Nina begged him to stop. Eli stood by the door, listening. Between the screams of the wind came something else. A pattern. A rhythm. 3 knocks. Silence. 3 knocks again. Then, through the blizzard, a voice cried out, identical to Nina's, pleading for help. "Eli, please." But Nina was standing right beside him. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a silence so thick it felt wrong. The forest looked untouched, yet the snow bore their names. Literally, etched in uneven letters near the cabin door. Eli, Cole, Nina. Cole stared at it, face pale. "Who did that?" he muttered, voice shaking. Nina took a cautious step forward, tracing her glove over the grooves. "It's carved from the inside of the snow," she whispered. Eli stood still, jaw tight. "It's not trying to scare us," he said quietly. "It's letting us know it remembers." They followed a trail leading north, away from camp, toward a rocky ridge. The wind whispered through broken trees, carrying fragments of words. "Help me!" It wasn't the voice of one thing. It was many, layered, like echoes overlapping. Cole filmed everything, muttering, "This is gold." Nina walked ahead, face hard with determination, every step deliberate. Eli lagged behind, fighting something unseen, memories clawing at him. The trail ended at a snow-covered pit lined with claw marks and bones. Human bones. Inside the pit, beneath layers of ice, Nina brushed aside snow until metal scraped against her gloves. A camera, half frozen, its body cracked. Cole lunged forward, wiping frost from the lens. "It's one of ours," he breathed. But when he powered it on, the screen came to life, showing footage not of them, but of 3 others. 3 strangers, standing in the same clearing, years ago, saying the same words, following the same trail, and then the same voice whispering their names. The loop was repeating. They retreated to the cabin, shaken. The air felt heavier now, colder than before. Cole replayed the footage on loop, whispering to himself, "It's us. It's always been us." Nina tried to reason, but her words fell apart mid-sentence. Eli stepped outside for air, gripping his rifle, eyes darting to the tree line. Snow fell again, faint and quiet. Then he saw it. The creature kneeling in the clearing, its fur peeled away at the shoulders, revealing patches of human skin beneath. It looked up, and for the first time, Eli saw his own face staring back. Eli stumbled back into the cabin, his voice shaking. "It's me. Out there, it's me." Cole grabbed his camera, rushing to film through the frosted glass. But the figure was gone. Nina stared at Eli, her breath quick. "What did it say?" she asked. He hesitated, then whispered, "It said I left it here." The wind rose, and through it came that same layered chorus, hundreds of voices merging into one. They weren't alone, and maybe they never had been. On the table, the old ranger badge rattled, vibrating as if something beneath the floorboards was breathing. The wind had stopped. The forest no longer whispered. It listened. Inside the cabin, Cole set up every camera he had left. Drones, tripods, body cams, each aimed toward the trees. "We need proof," he said, voice shaking but feverish with obsession. Nina sat by the fire, pale, her journal open but untouched. "Proof won't save us," she muttered. Eli didn't speak. He watched the window, his reflection flickering in the glass. For a heartbeat, the reflection didn't match him. It blinked when he didn't. He stepped back. Breath caught in his throat. "Cole," he whispered, "turn that off." But Cole didn't move. He was filming the window. Hours later, while snow fell thick and soundless, the first camera started recording on its own. Cole ran to check it, eyes wide. "It's motion triggered," he said. "But no one's out there." The monitor flickered. Static, then a shadow moving closer. A figure appeared at the edge of the frame, head tilting, mimicking their every motion inside the cabin. Nina whispered, "It's inside the reflection." Eli's reflection smiled when he didn't. Then the voice came through the speakers. Low, distorted human. "Why did you leave me here?" Cole couldn't stop watching. "It's perfect," he whispered, replaying the moment frame by frame. "Do you understand what this means?" Nina snapped. "It means we're next." But Eli wasn't listening. He was staring at the footage. When the creature turned, the frame froze. Its eyes were unmistakable. His. And when it opened its mouth, the voice that came out wasn't monstrous. It was pleading, human, cracked with despair. "Let me go." Cole replayed it, smiling through tears. "It's talking." Eli whispered, "No, it's remembering." The air in the cabin thickened. Every device flickered on, all cameras, all lights, recording. Cole tried to shut them off, but the buttons didn't respond. The speakers hissed, and overlapping voices filled the room, dozens of versions of Eli's voice saying his name, calling out, pleading. "It's not me," Eli said, backing away. Nina clutched his arm, whispering, "Then who is it?" The cabin door creaked open. A blast of icy air swept through, extinguishing the fire. Outside, in the blinding snow, dozens of figures stood still among the trees. Identical silhouettes, each one shaped like Eli. Cole stepped into the snow, camera in hand, eyes glassy. "They're waiting," he said softly. Nina shouted for him to stop, but he didn't turn back. He stood among the shapes, lifting the camera. The red light blinked once, twice, then went still. Through the viewfinder, he saw them clearly. Every one of them had Eli's face, eyes hollow but wet with grief. "What are you?" he whispered. The closest one blinked slowly, then smiled faintly. "We're what you left behind," it said in Eli's voice. The camera hit the ground. The snow swallowed the sound. The cameras lay buried under snow. Cole never came back. The forest was silent again, except for the faint hum of wind between the trees. Inside the cabin, Nina sat with her head in her hands, whispering prayers she didn't believe in. Eli stood at the window. Eli stood at the window, eyes hollow. The silhouettes were gone, but their tracks surrounded the cabin, hundreds of them. He turned to Nina, voice low, almost breaking. I think it's been trying to take my place." She looked up, trembling. "Then why hasn't it?" He didn't answer, because part of him already knew. Maybe it already had. That night, Eli dreamt of the pit. He saw himself buried beneath the snow, eyes open, lips moving without sound. The other him, the creature, stood above, watching. When Eli woke, he was already outside, barefoot in the snow, his rifle missing. Nina's shouts carried through the trees as he stumbled toward the clearing. The cold didn't hurt. He looked down at his hands and saw patches of dark hair sprouting through the skin, bloodless and glistening. His breath came out steady. The voice returned, calm and close. "It's time." Nina caught up to him at the clearing. He was kneeling beside the pit, whispering to something unseen. "Eli," she called, voice shaking. "Come back!" He turned slowly, and the look in his eyes froze her in place. Recognition mixed with relief. "It's not bad," he said softly. It's just becoming. Behind him, the snow stirred. A shape began to rise. Furred, human, incomplete. It reached for Eli, its fingers long and trembling. Nina screamed, but he didn't move. When the thing touched his face, he smiled. Nina fired the flare gun, a blinding streak of orange cutting through the storm. Eli flinched, the creature recoiling beside him. The light revealed its face in full. An unfinished copy of him, eyes wide with pain. "Don't!" Eli shouted, grabbing her arm. "It's me!" The flare died, plunging them back into darkness. When her vision cleared, both figures were gone, their footprints twisting into one another until they disappeared into the snow. Only Eli's rifle remained, lying half-buried, its stock carved with new words. "I am home." By dawn, the snow had stopped again. Nina walked alone, following the trail until it vanished near the ridge. There she found a camera, half-buried, still recording. The final footage showed Eli walking into the forest, bare-chested, unshivering, his skin slowly darkening under the frost. Behind him, the creature followed, step for step, until they merged, one shadow swallowing the other. The last frame flickered, showing only Eli's face, smiling faintly, his voice whispering, "Don't be afraid. I'm still here." Weeks later, rescue teams combed the ridge for any sign of the missing hunters. The cabin stood half-buried in snow, its roof collapsed under weight, the door hanging loose. Inside, the equipment still hummed faintly, cameras blinking red, batteries somehow not dead. A ranger named Harper reviewed the last recorded file. It began with static, then slowly came into focus. The forest at dawn, silent and endless. A single voice whispered faintly from behind the camera. "You're still watching, aren't you?" Harper turned down the volume, but the whisper grew louder, clearer, almost amused. Inside headquarters, the recovered footage flickered on the monitors. The investigators leaned close, eyes narrowing. The timestamp kept resetting, looping the same 6 minutes over and over. Eli walking into the trees, turning once toward the camera, smiling faintly. Behind him, the forest shifted, as though hundreds of shapes moved just beyond the visible frame. The sound was faint but constant, the steady rhythm of breathing. One officer muttered, "It's like it's alive." Harper couldn't look away. When Eli turned to the camera, the final time, it almost looked like he was staring directly at him. That night, Harper couldn't sleep. The wind outside the outpost sounded too rhythmic, too deliberate. He checked the playback again. 6 minutes, looping perfectly. Only this time there was something new. In the final second, a shape appeared behind Eli. Not a creature, a person, a woman, standing very still. Her hair dark, her coat beige. Harper froze the frame. It was Nina. Her eyes were open, her lips slightly parted, as if whispering something he couldn't hear. The timestamp flickered once, then changed to live feed. The feed played in real time now. No timestamp, no glitch. Eli stood at the edge of the tree line, looking straight into the lens, the forest behind him strangely motionless. "Do you understand now?" he said, his voice calm. Harper leaned forward, whispering, "Who are you talking to?" On screen, Eli tilted his head, almost as if listening, then quietly, "You!" The feed crackled, and Harper's own reflection appeared in the corner of the monitor. But the reflection smiled when he didn't. Morning came quietly. The outpost was empty. The monitors still played, looping the same clip. Eli standing in the snow, a faint smile on his face. Then, just before the end, the camera shifted, showing Harper now standing beside him, both looking into the lens. In the background, the forest swayed in perfect rhythm, like breathing. A soft voice whispered through the speakers, "The forest remembers everyone who listens long enough." The screen faded to white. Somewhere deep in the woods, the wind began to hum again. Steady, patient, and almost human.